Hi, and welcome back. I decided to start a new series called Mistakes I've Made because sometimes we portray our lives as a lot better than they actually are, but I think that learning from my own mistakes and also you can learn from my mistakes so that you don't have to do them, I think that can be very helpful. So today I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes that I made while traveling and maybe what I would suggest that you do or I do differently the next time to avoid these mistakes. If you're new here, my name is Kyria and I've traveled to over 60 countries now in the last 26 years. I love talking about travel. I've obviously done a lot of it, but I've done a lot of it wrong. So today's episode is going to be about money. I've made a lot of mistakes about everything, but I'm going to focus because I have so many of these on just money today. So I have my notes here, and the first one, now let me just make a quick caveat. I know that now we can use our cards for a lot of stuff, but there are still countries that are mostly cash-based, and even when you're in a more developed country, you might use cash for certain things. For instance, I often do a walking tour when I arrive to a new city, and a lot of times I do the free tour, where you get a free tour, but you have to tip the people. So, you normally need $10 or $15, whatever, worth of money in that country to be able to tip them. So you do need a little bit of cash for that. Also, I really feel weird kind of charging $1 or $2 worth of things. So if I'm getting bread, for instance, or something like that, I might want to have a little cash for that. Also, if you ever go to fruit markets or anything like that, you might need cash. And then in like Turkey or Georgia, for instance, some of the smaller transportation, the marshrukas and the dolmush, the little minivans, you might need cash for those. So if you're in a bigger city, you won't have that issue, but there are still instances that you need cash. So this is pertaining to that. And my mistake is that I often either don't get out enough money or I get out too much money. And most of the time, let me just tell you, it's not the former, it's the latter. So if you don't get out enough money, you can get it out again. But, back in the day, we used to get charged for ATM fees, and you still do get charged, but now there are a lot of cards that you can use that will reimburse those. So for instance, I know Charles Schwab is one that does that. I have Fidelity, which also does that. So I don't really worry about whether or not if I want to take $10 out of the ATM, I take $10 out of the ATM, and I don't get charged, or if I do get charged, I get reimbursed. So that's not as big of a thing. Getting too much money out, now that is another story. So let me give you a couple of examples actually recently. So basically I went to Georgia and I just come from Turkey. So in Turkey, the exchange rate is roughly about 40 lira to a dollar. So then I get to Georgia and it's roughly about 2.75 Georgian lari to a dollar. Okay, so bear with me here. We're not going to do too much math because all I have is this one page of notes. So I had been in Turkey where you have to get out like 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever lira when you go to the ATM. So I got to Georgia and I told myself in my mind, I'm going to get out. Oh, the other thing, just a little caveat. In Georgia, when you're in the more rural areas, most of them only take cash. So your lodging you have to pay cash for. Sometimes your food you have to pay cash for. So you do pay for cash a lot. So I arrived in Georgia and I just got out a little bit because I didn't really know like how much I was going to need, or I wanted to figure it out first. So then I got into the town of Mestia, which is a very small town, but I knew that I was going to have to pay for my lodging and my food and my next transportation. So I thought, you know what? And I was going to be in Georgia for over a month. So I thought I'm just going to get out enough cash for the whole month for all the transportation and everything that I'm going to need. In my mind, I was thinking like a couple $100s. So when you get to the ATM, you put in your card, and the next thing that it says withdrawal, so you push that, and then it gives you options. So it says like, do you want 500, 700, 900, 1500, 1900, right? And in my mind, I was thinking, I don't want an even amount because I've made this mistake before. This is another tip, which is not part of my mistakes, but I'll tell you now. Never get out even 100s because a lot of times you'll go to a smaller place and you want to buy a piece of bread and it only costs 2 of whatever the currency is and all you have is 100. So you want to get out, if you can, 98 or 95. So at least you have a 5, hopefully, right? Because it's an uneven amount. So that's what I was thinking. I was thinking I have to get an uneven amount. So I don't want 2,000. I want 1,950, right? Something very odd. So I got out my amount. And don't quote me here because I don't know if it was exactly 1,950, but I wanted to get an uneven amount. So I put in my own number, and I went on my business. And I have my cash in an account that has a money fund. So you have to redeem the money fund. But I always keep a couple $100 in cash, and then I keep the rest in the money fund. So I checked my account, and it said I had a shortfall, basically. What I had done is I had accidentally taken out about $800 worth of cash because I had messed up the decimal, because in my mind I was thinking lira, but it was basically you had to remove some decimals to make it work. The thing was too, and this is another lesson, is I'd just gotten to Mesdia on the minivan. I had all my bags with me. I wanted to get to the ATM because I knew I was going to have to pay my accommodation. And I wanted to make sure I had small bills because I knew that the accommodation was only 90 lari, and I didn't want to only have, I didn't know what the bills were, but let's say a 500, lari bill. So I got distracted and I had all my stuff with me, and I just wanted to get the cash out and put it in my pocket as fast as I could because I didn't want anyone to see that I had so much cash, which, in my mind I thought was $200 worth, but was really like almost $800 worth. So I got flustered and frustrated, and I didn't use my brain to do actual math. So I guess the lesson for that is you can use a currency converter, and I do have one on my phone. I just, spaced. But you can put in, I want $100 worth of whatever the currency is. And I don't really think normally I need more than $100 worth, to be honest. But, in some places you might need a little more, but you can always get more money out. So I would say err on the side of less. So that's the lesson for that one. The next one is, I titled this one, the ATM Fiasco. So I was heading to Europe to do some hiking, and in Europe with the hiking, a lot of times you stay in huts, and a lot of the huts only take cash. And I knew this. So I don't know what I was thinking before I left. Because I was going to be hiking, I cleared out everything. I was like, I need to be as light as possible. So I'm going to get rid of anything that I don't need. So I jettisoned a bunch of things out of my wallet. I only had one small, tiny, thin wallet with 2 cards, with 2 cards in it. And then I was on the BART train. So in San Francisco, the subway is called the BART. And I was on the way to the airport with my backpack and everything. And I don't know what made me think of it, but I realized I don't have my ATM card. I never use my ATM card at home. I never use it. I never carry cash. And there's no reason really for me to get money out normally. And even though I never use it, I normally do carry it around because, you carry like George Costanza with the big fat wallet. Sometimes you have way too many things in your wallet. But because I was going to be hiking, I had cleared out anything that I didn't need. So I had cleared out my ATM card because all I kept was 2 credit cards and some cash, basically. And $20 worth of cash, nothing big. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I know I'm going to be hiking hut to hut, and I know I'm going to need cash, and I don't have any US dollars to exchange, and I don't have my ATM card, which is normally what I do to get money out. And I don't know my PIN for my credit card to be able to get cash out with my credit card. So that was really stupid of me. What did I do? Well, luckily, and this is really stupid of me too, so don't do this, but it did save my butt. I had taken a picture of all of my cards at one point, but I do save them in a very safe place, but you probably shouldn't take pictures of your financial cards because it has the code and everything in it. But anyway, luckily I had done that. So I had all the information for my ATM card, and I loaded it onto my Google Pay so that I could tap to pay with my ATM. But this still could be a problem because how am I going to get cash out, right? Am I going to be able to get you euros with this? I didn't know. So luckily at the airport, there's an ATM and it has a tap to pay option. So I got cash out. So I got I don't know. That's another thing, right? How much cash am I going to need? Are all of them not going to take credit cards, or are some of them going to be able to take credit cards? I don't really know. I don't really want to get a big chunk of euros, or US dollars, I mean. So I think I got like $300 out because I just really wasn't sure how it was going to go. And in my past experience, the huts had not taken any cards. Now that was in 2014-15, and this time was 2022. So I didn't really know if that had changed. So I got US dollars out of the ATM at the airport. And then I went to, I think I was going to Slovenia, but I had a layover in Austria. So when I got to Austria, I immediately, again, this was kind of stupid of me, immediately exchanged the US dollars, not all of them, like 200 of them, for euros. I actually had a layover in Amsterdam, not Austria, but I was heading to Slovenia. So I had a layover in Amsterdam, and I was going to have a long layover. So I actually left the airport. So once again, not super smart of me, but I got the money in the airport because I just didn't want to like not have an option to get money. I was very worried about that for some reason, but I should have just done it in a bank in the actual city. I probably would have got a way better rate because I totally got reamed on the exchange rate. And funny enough, in the end, Slovenia, in the huts, probably 50% of them at the time did take cards. So I ended up using my credit card more and having extra euros. In the end, I had a great time. It doesn't really matter. And I had the cash if I needed it, but that was a little bit stressful for a minute. So number 3, old money. Okay, so old money. So I'll give you a couple of examples about old money that are kind of easy to understand, and that is I went to France, I got francs. This was way back in the day, and of course they went to the euro. So by the time I went back to France, there was no way for me to get any money back for the francs. And this has happened a couple of times where the country has turned to a different currency. The other example is I went to Turkey in 2004. The lira had like 6 extra zeros. They got rid of the zeros and they basically devalued all of the old currency. So actually, I brought it with me on this trip because I was going to go to Turkey, and I thought maybe I would be able to use it. I don't know why or what I was thinking, but clearly it had been like 20 years too long for me to be able to do that, so I lost that money. But in a more practical terms, a lot of times it's not even that they changed to a different currency or changed the way that they're valuing their currency. For instance, I went to Scotland and I had like 50 pounds left when I came home, and my dad was going to Scotland a few years later, so I gave him my 50-pound note, and he went and said they wouldn't accept it because they had changed all their notes and they were basically valueless at this point. And so the moral of the story is, going back to the getting too much money out, don't get too much money out. And if you do get too much money out, exchange it, return it. Even if you get a bad exchange rate, that's better than zero. I mean, I basically lost 50 pounds. Oh, that would be nice, right? I actually lost 50 pounds because they changed it and I didn't know. The same thing happened. So Switzerland, I went to Switzerland. I actually still have a Swiss franc 50 Swiss franc note currently. I looked it up, and luckily, if you take it back to the Swiss bank, they will exchange it, and there's supposedly no expiration date, but I'm not going back to Switzerland anytime soon. So I have this 50 Swiss francs, which is basically like over $50. So I'm basically losing money by not being smart and exchanging my money before I leave the border or before I leave the city or whatever. So a couple of tips about that. Usually exchange rate places will only take bills. So if you have any change left, make sure you use it. And like for example, for pounds or for euros, a lot of times this change is worth a lot of money. It might be a €1 or €2 or whatever it is, but it might be worth a lot of money. So use it. Buy some snacks, buy a souvenir, buy a postcard for a friend, whatever you need to do, just use it, because when you go to the exchange place, they're going to not take any coins. The other thing is they won't give you any coins. So for instance, when I was in Armenia, I also got out a little bit too much money. So I took my Armenian money back to the bank and asked for euros, but they'll only give you bills, paper bills. So for instance, with euros, if it's less than 5, it's going to be change. So they won't give you any change. So they won't give you 67 euros. They'll only give you 65 euros or 70 euros. But you can't give them Armenian change either to try to make up for that. So just remember that it's only bills and bills. So make sure you use your change or use your money or exchange it before you leave the country. And here's another one, Albanian lek, for instance. I still have some Albanian lek, and I actually am planning on going to Albania soon, so I'm really, really hoping I can use it. But I've had this lek for 15 years now, so who knows, it might be old as well. But nobody else will exchange lek. So there are some countries where you can't exchange it outside of the country. Now maybe if it's euro or a dollar or a pound, that's not a problem. But if it's some more obscure currency, you probably want to exchange it when you're in the country that actually has that currency. So make sure you do that. Okay, the last one is to just make sure that you have a backup. So for instance, in the case of my ATM card, I should have had a different ATM card. I mean, I got lucky with mine, but currently what I do now is I have a Fidelity ATM card because that one refunds all my fees that I get at any ATM. But I also have my regular bank ATM card, which I do have with me, but I keep it in my backpack. So I have my Fidelity card in my wallet, and then I have the spare card in my backpack. And this goes the same with credit cards. So I have my main credit card that I'm going to use, and then I have a spare in my backpack. And actually, I have more than one spare. And then, of course, I always load everything onto my Google Wallet, or you can do it onto Apple Pay. But I think that it's very important that you put it on your phone and have it in your wallet. So backups to backups to backups, right? So just in case anything ever goes wrong. And I have noticed, just so you know, in other countries, I don't see a lot of tap to pay ATMs. So in the US, you can tap to pay your ATM card to get money out. I don't see that so much where I've been traveling lately. So I think that having it on your phone may not be that helpful. So just maybe having 2 ATM cards is definitely a good thing, especially if you're a solo traveler like me. If you have a partner, then you can rely on the partner. But if you're by yourself, you definitely need to make sure that you have lots of backups and keep them all in separate places so that if your backpack gets taken from the, thing of the bus, the bottom of the bus, then you'll be okay. Or if your wallet gets stolen, then you'll have a backup somewhere else, or maybe even have a third one that is somewhere else, like in your pocket or in your bra or wherever you keep it. So that's another tip. Just make sure you have backups. I recently had a fraudulent charge on my credit card, and so I had to cancel it and get a new one, and that will be a story for another day. But the takeaway for this is, the great thing is if you need to do this, first of all, if you have a nice credit card, they will send it to you wherever you are. And second of all is that they actually update the Google Pay or Apple Pay automatically. So you'll be able to use the card usually within 24 hours of you reporting the fraudulent charges. So that's actually a very nice thing about the world today. But again, if your phone fails, then you want to make sure that you have some cards as well. So don't rely solely on your phone. Make sure you have both. Your phone, the backup, and the other backup. And I always carry a little bit of cash with me, US dollar cash, just in case. And I keep that in a secret place as well, which I'm not going to tell you. But just, $50 or $100 or whatever, because you never know when you might just need a little bit of a backup. All right, so that's 3 money mistakes that I've made and a couple of tips on how you can avoid them. So let me know in the comments, have you ever done this? What is the worst money mistake you've made when traveling? And if this content is helpful to you, make sure you subscribe or like to follow along for the next one. And thank you for watching, and happy travels. If this content is helpful, I can't speak. And if this content is